Deho stared at his screen and rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working at the Federation monitoring station for 12 years, and he had never seen anything like this. The signal came from somewhere in the Vega 7 system, but it was not like any normal space message. This signal felt alive somehow. The young communications officer called his supervisor. "Hye-jin, you need to see this right away." Hye-jin walked over to Deho's station. She was the chief xenobiologist on the station, which meant she studied alien life forms. Her job was to understand new species when they made first contact with the Federation. She looked at the data on the screen and her face went pale. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The signal has emotional patterns in it. Our machines should not be able to read emotions through space." The signal was coming from planet Nevos in the Vega 7 system. The people there were called the Kalari. They looked like living crystals and talked to each other by making musical sounds. The Federation had known about them for 50 years. They were peaceful people who never caused trouble for anyone. Deho played the message for Hye-jin. When the translation came through the speakers, both of them felt cold fear run down their backs. "To anyone who can hear our song," the message began. "We are the Kalari of Nevos. We have always sung songs of peace and joy, but now we sing our final song. The Devourers have awakened." Hye-jin grabbed Deho's arm. "Get Admiral Taman on the line right now. This is a code black emergency." The message continued as they waited for the Admiral. "The Devourers came from the dead space between stars. They have been sleeping for 1,000,000 years, but something woke them up. They eat everything. Stars, planets, ships, people. They turn everything into more of themselves." Admiral Taman appeared on the screen. He was an old man with gray hair and many battle scars. He had commanded Federation fleets for 30 years and had never lost a war. "What is the emergency?" he asked. "Sir, we are getting a distress call from the Kalari," Hye-jin said. "They say something called the Devourers is attacking them." The Admiral's face became very serious. "Play the message." They listened as the Kalari continued their desperate song. "We sent our fastest ships to warn other worlds. None came back. The Devourers followed our ships and found 3 more star systems. Now those systems are gone too. Billions of people turned into gray dust." The message explained how the Devourers worked. They were like a disease that spread through space. When they touched something, it changed into the same gray material they were made of. Ships, planets, even stars became part of their growing mass. "We tried to fight them," the Kalari sang. "Our crystal cities can make powerful energy beams. We destroyed thousands of their ships. But for every ship we killed, 10 more grew from the pieces. They learn from everything we do. They copy our weapons and make them stronger." Admiral Taman stood up from his chair. "How long ago did this message start?" Deho checked his instruments. 6 days ago, sir. But the signal is getting weaker. I think they are still broadcasting, but something is interfering with it." The Kalari message became more desperate. "The Federation sent 3 fleets to help us. Admiral Korin came with 200 ships. They fought bravely for 2 days. Then the Devourers learned how to copy Federation technology. Now Admiral Korin's ships hunt for us with gray hulls and dead crews." Hye-jin felt sick. Admiral Korin was her friend. They had served together on exploration missions for 10 years. Now he was dead and his ships were being used by the enemy. "We have tried everything," the Kalari continued. "Science, weapons, prayers to our crystal ancestors. Nothing stops them. They are too smart. They adapt to every plan we make, every weapon we build, every defense we create." The Admiral called his staff officers. "Get me fleet status reports from every sector. I want to know how many ships we can send to Vega 7. A young officer shook his head. "Sir, we already sent everything we could spare. Admiral Korin took our best ships and our smartest commanders. Fleet Command says we cannot risk any more losses." The Kalari message was getting harder to hear through the static. "We have perhaps 3 of your solar cycles before they finish eating our world. We do not ask for rescue anymore. We only ask that someone remember we tried to sing beauty into the universe." The signal showed pictures of what the Devourers had done to other worlds. Green planets turned into gray spheres. Bright stars became dim and cold. Whole civilizations erased like they had never existed. "Look at these numbers," Hye-jin said, pointing to her analysis. "The Devourers are spreading faster than we thought. At this rate, they will reach Federation core worlds in less than 2 years." Admiral Taman walked to the window that looked out into space. In the distance, he could see merchant ships bringing food and supplies to the station. Normal people living normal lives. They had no idea that something was coming to end everything they knew. Sir, Deho said quietly, the Kalari message is getting very weak. I think this might be their final transmission. They listened as the Crystal People sang their last song. We were a young race, but we tried to bring harmony to the stars. If any survive what is coming, please know that we sang until the end. We sang for hope. We sang for beauty. We sang for the dream that someday someone might find a way to stop the gray death that comes from the void. The signal ended with a sound like breaking glass. Then there was only silence. Admiral Taemin turned back to his officers. Send word to Federation Command. Tell them the Vega 7 system has fallen. Tell them the Devourers are real, and they are coming for all of us. Hyejin looked at the star charts on the wall. Each point of light represented millions of people. Families, children, artists, scientists. All of them would be gray dust unless someone found an answer. What do we do now? She asked. The Admiral was quiet for a long time. We prepare for the impossible, and we hope that somewhere in this galaxy, there is something the Devourers cannot adapt to. But as he said those words, Admiral Taemin did not believe them. Every Federation computer had run the calculations. Every strategy had been tested. The math was clear. The Devourers could not be stopped. In the silence of the monitoring station, Deho saved the Kalari's final message. Someday, when the gray death came for them too, maybe someone would find it and remember that a Crystal People had sung songs of beauty until their very last breath. The Federation Council chamber had never been so quiet. 300 representatives from across the galaxy sat in their seats, but nobody spoke. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the same terrible image over and over. Star systems turning gray, planets becoming dust, civilizations ending. Jinwoo stood up from his seat. He was one of the oldest council members and had fought in many wars. His voice was steady, but his hands shook as he spoke. We have lost contact with 7 more systems, he announced. The Devourers are moving faster than our predictions. Our best military minds have run every simulation. Every strategy ends the same way. Total defeat. Murmurs of fear filled the chamber. Representatives from different worlds spoke in their own languages, but the meaning was always the same. They were all going to die. So Young raised her hand to speak. She was much younger than most council members and studied primitive alien cultures. Many people thought her job was not important, but Jinwoo gave her permission to talk. I have been researching the historical records, she said. Every race that has fought the Devourers has used the same approach. Logic, science, organized military tactics. The Devourers learned from all of these things. An old representative from the Altair system made an angry noise. What else would we use? Those are the tools of civilization. So Young pulled up data on her personal screen. There is one species we have not considered. They were quarantined 200 years ago because they were too dangerous for galactic society. The chamber became even quieter. Everyone knew what species she meant. You cannot be serious, Jinwoo said. The humans nearly destroyed their own planet. They fight wars over small pieces of land. They kill each other for resources they do not even need. So Young nodded. Yes, they are violent and unpredictable. But that might be exactly what we need. The Devourers adapt to logical patterns. Humans do not follow logical patterns. Captain Hyunsik had been quiet during the meeting, but now he spoke up. I have read the human quarantine files. During their resource wars, they won battles that should have been impossible. They created weapons that made no sense. They used tactics that their own computers said would fail. Because they are insane, another representative said. Maybe, Hyunsik replied. But they are alive. And every logical civilization that has fought the Devourers is now gray dust. So Young brought up historical records of human conflicts. Look at their Battle of Midway and their Second World War. They attacked a much stronger enemy fleet with broken codes and damaged ships. They should have lost badly. Instead, they destroyed their enemy's most powerful aircraft carriers. The images showed human soldiers doing impossible things. Tiny groups defeating much larger armies. Scientists creating new technologies in weeks instead of years. Artists and writers inspiring their people to fight when all hope was gone. During their Korean War, So Young continued, a single human regiment held off 30,000 enemy soldiers for 3 days. They had no food, no ammunition, and no hope of rescue, but they kept fighting because their sergeant told them it was the right thing to do. Jinwoo shook his head. These examples prove they are dangerous, not that they can help us. The Devourers are dangerous too, So Young said. Maybe we need our own monsters to fight theirs. The council argued for hours. Some representatives wanted to evacuate to other galaxies. Others wanted to hide on distant planets and hope the Devourers would not find them. A few suggested surrendering and asking the Devourers for mercy. But as they talked, more star systems went dark on the galactic map. Captain Hyun-sik stood up. My ship is fast enough to reach Earth before the Devourers spread much farther. If we are going to ask the humans for help, we need to do it now. What would we even say to them? Asked a representative from Beta Centauri. Hello, we ignored you for 2 centuries, but now we need you to save us? So Young had thought about this. We tell them the truth. We tell them that the galaxy is dying and we need people who can do impossible things. And if they refuse? Jin Woo asked. Then we die with honor instead of hiding in fear, Hyun-sik said. The vote was very close. 149 representatives voted to contact Earth. 148 voted against it. 3 representatives did not vote at all. Jin Woo looked tired and old. The motion passes. Captain Hyun-sik, take your ship to Earth. But remember, we are not just asking for their help. We are bringing monsters back into a civilized galaxy. Captain Hyun-sik saluted. Understood, sir. My ship will leave within the hour. As the council meeting ended, So Young walked with the captain toward his ship. The Harmony's Edge was a fast scout vessel designed for long-range missions. It could reach Earth in 10 days if the engines ran at maximum power. Do you really think the humans will help us? Hyun-sik asked. So Young looked out at the stars through the station's windows. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were eating another world. Somewhere else, human families were living peaceful lives, not knowing that the universe needed them to be dangerous again. I think humans are the only people crazy enough to fight something that cannot be defeated, she said. Hyun-sik laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Let us hope you are right. The Harmony's Edge left the station an hour later. It carried a simple message recorded by the Federation Council. The message was directed to whoever ruled Earth now. People of Earth, the message began. This is the Galactic Federation. We know we quarantined your world because we feared your violent nature. We were wrong to fear you then. But now we need that violence. The message explained about the Devourers and showed the destruction they had caused. It ended with words that would have been impossible to imagine 2 weeks earlier. The galaxy is dying because we are too civilized to save it. We need people who can think like monsters to fight the monsters that are coming. We need you to be what you have always been. We need you to be human. As the ship traveled through hyperspace toward Earth, Captain Hyun-sik wondered what they would find there. Would the humans have changed? Would they still be the unpredictable fighters their records described? Or would 200 years of peace have made them as logical and defenseless as every other Federation species? In 10 days he would have his answer. In 10 days he would learn if humanity still remembered how to be beautifully, terrifyingly human. Prime Minister Gun-woo stood on the balcony of the Seoul Global Center and looked out over the city. Flying cars moved between tall buildings covered in green plants. Children played in parks built on rooftops. The air was clean and the people looked happy. Earth in 2387 was nothing like the world that had fought the resource wars 2 centuries ago. After those terrible conflicts nearly destroyed the planet, humanity had learned to work together. The Seoul Accords had created a world government based on cooperation instead of competition. Sir, his assistant called from inside. Director Mi Young from Earth Defense Force is here to see you. Gun-woo nodded and walked back into his office. Mi Young was a small woman with sharp eyes who had spent her life studying military strategy. She looked worried, which was unusual for her. Prime Minister, we just received a message from space, she said. It came from something called the Galactic Federation. Gun-woo sat down at his desk. I thought we were alone in the universe. So did we, Mi Young replied. But it seems other species have known about us for 200 years. They have been watching us and decided we were too dangerous to contact. She played the Federation message for him. Gun-woo listened quietly as the alien voices explained about the Devourers and the destruction they had caused. When the message ended with a request for help, he was quiet for a long time. They want us to be monsters again, he said finally. Yes, sir. They want us to fight something that has destroyed every civilized species that has tried to stop it. Gun-woo called an emergency meeting of the Earth Council. Representatives from every continent gathered in the main chamber. Some attended in person, others appeared as holograms from their home cities. Dong-hyun, the head of Earth's Science Division, spoke first.
I have analyzed the technical data they sent us.
These Devourers are unlike anything we have ever seen. They can copy any technology and make it stronger. They adapt to every logical strategy. Yunji, who commanded Earth's Special Forces, raised her hand. Our military has been focused on defense and peacekeeping for 2 centuries. We have not fought a real war since the resource wars ended. But we remember how, Gunwu said. The question is whether we should remember. The Earth Council debated for hours. Some representatives argued that humanity had worked too hard to become peaceful. They said it would be wrong to become violent again. Even to save the galaxy, others disagreed. They pointed out that millions of alien people were dying while they talked. If humanity could help, they had a responsibility to try. What if we become monsters and cannot change back? Asked the representative from New Tokyo. What if helping the galaxy destroys our own peace? Gunwu had been thinking about this question since he heard the Federation message. 200 years ago, our ancestors fought terrible wars because they were competing for limited resources. But this is different. This time we would fight to protect others, not to take things for ourselves. Mi Young stood up. Sir, I recommend we send a small team first. Let them assess the situation and report back. If the Devourers are really as dangerous as the Federation claims, we can decide how much help to send. No, Gunwu said firmly. If we do this, we do it completely. Half measures will not work against an enemy that adapts to everything. He walked to the window and looked out at the peaceful city again. Our children have grown up in a world without war. They think peace is the natural state of humanity, but we know better. We know that sometimes good people must do terrible things to protect what they love. The vote was closer than Gunwu had expected. 67 representatives voted to help the Federation. 53 voted to stay neutral. 8 did not vote. The motion passes, Gunwu announced. Earth will answer the Federation's call for help. Within hours, Earth began to change. Military factories that had been making peaceful equipment switched to building weapons. Scientists who had spent their careers studying medicine and environmental protection began working on ways to destroy the Devourers. But Gunwu knew that technology alone would not be enough. The Federation had better science than Earth, and they had still lost. Humanity's advantage was not their tools. It was their ability to think in ways that made no sense. He called Dong-hyun to his office. I need you to create a special research team, but do not use only scientists. I want artists, musicians, writers, philosophers. I want people who think with their hearts instead of their minds. Dong-hyun looked confused. Sir, how will artists help us fight an alien invasion? The Devourers adapt to logical thinking, Gunwu explained. So we will give them something illogical. We will fight them with inspiration, creativity, and controlled madness. Meanwhile, Yunji was gathering her special forces teams, but instead of choosing only the most disciplined soldiers, she also selected people known for being unpredictable, former athletes who made impossible plays, emergency rescue workers who succeeded when all hope was gone, even a few reformed criminals who had unique ways of solving problems. I do not understand this strategy, her second-in-command said. Good, Yunji replied. If we do not understand our own strategy, the Devourers definitely will not understand it either. Earth's shipyards began building a new type of spacecraft. The ships looked wrong somehow. Their weapons were placed in strange locations. Their armor had gaps that seemed like weaknesses, but were actually designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. Dong-hyun's mixed team of scientists and artists created weapons that worked on principles that seemed impossible, missiles that became more accurate when their guidance systems were damaged, energy shields that got stronger when they were overloaded, communication systems that worked better when they were partly broken. These designs violate several laws of physics, one scientist complained. Exactly, replied a musician who was now helping design weapons. If they confuse us, imagine how confused the Devourers will be. Gunwu received regular reports from Captain Hyun-sik's ship as it traveled toward Earth. The Federation was losing more systems every day. Soon the Devourers would be too strong for anyone to stop. On the night before the human fleet was scheduled to leave Earth, Gunwu spoke to the planet on global television. My fellow humans, he began, tomorrow we return to war. Not because we want to, but because people we have never met are crying for help in languages we do not understand. He looked directly into the camera. For 2 centuries we have learned to be civilized. We have learned to build instead of destroy, to cooperate instead of compete, to create beauty instead of spreading fear. The Prime Minister paused and took a deep breath. Tomorrow we remember what we were before we became civilized. We remember how to be the humans who climbed out of caves and conquered their own world. We remember how to be the monsters that other monsters fear. The next morning, Earth's fleet left the solar system. 100 ships carrying humanity's most dangerous gift to the galaxy. Not their technology or their weapons, but their willingness to be impossible when impossible was the only thing that could work. As the ships entered hyperspace, Gunwu whispered a prayer to whatever gods might be listening. Let us save them without losing ourselves. Let us be monsters in service of something beautiful. Admiral Jae-hoon stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Indomitable and watched the Vega 7 system appear on his screens. What he saw made his stomach hurt. 3 planets were already gray and lifeless. The 4th planet, Nivos, was half covered in the same gray substance that the Devourers had become. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we are detecting Federation ships in the system, but their signals are wrong somehow." Yujin, the combat psychologist who had helped design their battle plans, looked at the data. "Those are the ships that came to help the Kalari. The Devourers have taken control of them." On the screens they could see hundreds of Federation warships, but instead of their normal blue and silver colors, the ships were gray like everything else the Devourers touched. Worse, the ships were moving in perfect formation, like a single giant organism. "Admiral Corrin's fleet," Jae-hoon said quietly. "They died trying to save the Kalari, and now the enemy uses their ships against us." Behind the human fleet, more Earth ships dropped out of hyperspace. Engineer Woo Sung's vessels looked nothing like normal warships. They had weapons that pointed in wrong directions and armor that seemed to be falling apart. "All ships, this is Admiral Jae-hoon," he broadcast to the fleet. "We are not here to win a normal space battle. We are here to confuse the enemy so badly that they forget how to fight." Boram, one of Earth's most unpredictable pilots, laughed over the comm system. "Sir, my fighter squadron is ready to fly like we have never flown before. Remember," Yujin added to the broadcast, "the Devourers learn from logical tactics. So we will use tactics that make no logical sense. Follow your instincts, not your training." The Devourer ships detected the human fleet and began moving to attack. But instead of charging forward like normal warships, the human fleet did something that made no sense. Half the ships flew backward while shooting forward. The other half spun in circles while their weapons fired in random directions. The Devourers slowed down, trying to understand the human battle plan. Their ships had absorbed the knowledge of dozens of military civilizations, but none of them had ever fought like this. Woo Sung activated his special weapons. Missiles launched from his ships and immediately began flying in wrong directions. Some missiles flew toward empty space. Others turned around and seemed to chase their own ships. But when Devourer ships tried to intercept the missiles, they discovered the weapons were exactly where they needed to be. "Their adaptation systems are confused," reported a tactical officer. "They keep trying to learn our attack patterns, but our patterns change every few seconds." Boram's fighter squadron performed maneuvers that would have been impossible for normal pilots. They flew through asteroid fields at full speed while shooting backward. They used debris from destroyed ships as shields while flying upside down. When Devourer fighters tried to copy their movements, they crashed into each other. But the Devourers were learning, even from chaos. Their ships began to adapt to unpredictability by becoming unpredictable themselves. Soon gray ships were flying in strange patterns and firing weapons in random directions. "They are copying our insanity," Yujin observed, "but they are doing it logically. They have created a computer program to be random." Jae-hoon smiled. "Then it is time for Phase 2. He opened a channel to all human ships. "All vessels begin protocol impossible." The human fleet suddenly stopped all their random movements and began flying in perfect military formation. They used textbook battle tactics and classical strategic maneuvers. Their weapons fired in precise patterns and their ships moved like they were performing a dance. The Devourer ships, which had just adapted to chaos, suddenly had to adapt to order. But while they were changing their systems, the human ships switched again. Now half the fleet used logical tactics while the other half continued being chaotic. "The enemy adaptation systems are overloading," reported Woo Sung. "They cannot decide which pattern to copy." On the surface of Nivos, the last Kalari crystal cities were sending out desperate songs. The beautiful harmonic music reached the human ships and something unexpected happened. Na Young, the communications specialist, began translating the Kalari music in real time. They are not just calling for help, she said with tears in her eyes. They are singing battle songs. They are trying to fight with music. Yujin had an idea. What if we combine their harmony with our chaos? What if we fight to the rhythm of their songs? Jae-hoon gave the order, and the human fleet began moving to the beat of Kalari music. But instead of copying the Crystal People's harmony exactly, they added their own discord to it. The result was music that was both beautiful and wild, like a symphony played by a rock band. The effect on the Devourers was immediate. Their ships began flying in confused spirals. Some crashed into asteroids, others started shooting at each other. The adaptation systems that had learned to copy dozens of civilizations could not understand music that was both organized and chaotic at the same time. But the battle was far from over. The Devourers had one more adaptation to make. The gray substance covering half of Nevos began to rise into space like a giant cloud. It was not just ships anymore. It was a living wall of destruction that could swallow the entire human fleet. "Sir," Boram reported, "that thing is bigger than our entire home city. How do we fight something like that?" Jae-hoon looked at his screens and made a decision that his tactical computer said was completely insane. "We fly directly into it, sir?" his crew asked in shock. "The Devourers expect us to run away from something that big," he explained. "They expect us to try to fight it from a distance. So we will do the opposite. We will get so close that their targeting systems cannot track us." The human fleet flew straight into the gray cloud. Inside, everything was darkness and confusion. Ships flew by instinct and sound, using the Kalari songs as navigation beacons. Weapons fired at point-blank range into the gray substance, tearing holes that closed themselves immediately. But something else was happening inside the cloud. The random nature of the human attacks was creating patterns that the Devourers could not predict or copy. Each weapon that fired made the next weapon's effect different. Each ship that moved changed the battle for every other ship. It is like jazz music, Na-young realized. Each player improvises, but they all listen to each other. We are creating harmony from chaos. The gray cloud began to shudder and contract. The Devourers were trying to adapt to music made from battle, but music was not something that could be copied by machines. Music required understanding, feeling, and the willingness to be surprised by your own creation. Slowly, the cloud began to break apart. Pieces of gray matter fell back toward Nevos like rain. The remaining Devourer ships fled toward deep space, their adaptation systems overloaded and confused. The human fleet emerged from the cloud battered but victorious. Behind them, the planet Nevos was still half gray, but the other half sparkled with crystal cities that sang songs of gratitude and amazement. "All ships. Report status," Jae-hoon commanded. 40% of our fleet is damaged," came the reply. "But we are all still here, sir." Yujin was studying the readings from the battle. "Admiral, the Devourers retreated, but they took data from this fight with them. They will try to adapt to what we did here." Jae-hoon nodded. "Then we will have to be even more impossible next time." As the human fleet regrouped, Na-young established communication with the surviving Kalari. The Crystal People sang a song of wonder and hope. They had never seen anyone fight the way humans fought. They had never imagined that chaos and harmony could work together. "Thank you for teaching us a new kind of music," the Kalari sang. "But the Devourers are not defeated. They are learning from this battle. Soon they will return with new adaptations." Jae-hoon looked at the star charts showing Devourer movements across the galaxy. The enemy was regrouping, but now they knew humans existed. The next battle would be much harder. "Then we better learn some new songs," he said. Commander Sun-ho stood in the crystal gardens of Nevos and listened to the Kalari sing their songs of preparation. The Crystal People had rebuilt their cities quickly, but now they built them differently. Instead of perfect harmony, their new buildings included human-inspired discord. The result was architecture that was both beautiful and impossible to predict. "The Devourers are coming back," Na-young reported from her communication station. "Our deep space sensors detect them gathering in the void between galaxies." "But they are different now," Sun-ho nodded. 3 months had passed since the first battle at Nevos. In that time, the Devourers had studied human tactics and found new ways to adapt. They were no longer just copying technology. They were trying to copy the concept of chaos itself. "Show me the data," he said. Na-young projected images of the approaching Devourer fleet. The ships no longer moved in perfect formation. Instead, they flew in patterns that seemed random, but were actually calculated chaos. Computer-generated unpredictability. They have learned to be illogical, Young explained, but they are doing it logically, which makes them predictable again. Kyung-min, a philosopher warrior from Earth, was also studying the data. He had spent years thinking about the nature of consciousness and creativity. They can copy the appearance of chaos, he said, but they cannot copy the reason we choose to be chaotic. What do you mean? Sun-ho asked. Humans are unpredictable because we fight for love, hope, and dreams, Kyung-min explained. The Devourers are unpredictable because their computers tell them to be. They can copy our actions, but they cannot copy our hearts. The Kalari had been listening to this conversation through their harmonic translation system. Their response was a complex song that Na Young struggled to translate. They are saying something about purpose, she said. They think the Devourers are not really evil. They are part of some kind of universal system. One of the older Kalari, a crystal being whose song was deeper than the others, approached Sun-ho. Through Na Young's translation, the being explained something that changed everything. The Devourers wake up when civilizations become too similar, the Kalari sang. They are like white blood cells in a cosmic body. When the galaxy becomes infected with too much order, too much predictability, the Devourers come to restore chaos. Sun-ho felt cold. Are you saying they are supposed to destroy civilizations? Not destroy, the Kalari corrected. Reset. They force evolution by making survival depend on adaptation and creativity. But something went wrong this time. They became too powerful and started destroying instead of changing. Kyung-min understood first. The galaxy had become too civilized. Every species was using the same logic, the same science, the same predictable solutions. The Devourers were supposed to force change, but instead they found it easier to just consume everything. So how do we stop them? Sun-ho asked. We do not stop them, the Kalari sang. We convince them that the galaxy is still capable of growth and change. We prove that there is still enough diversity and creativity to make destroying unnecessary. The human and Kalari scientists worked together to understand what the Devourers really were. They were not an invasion force from another galaxy. They were a natural part of this galaxy's ecosystem, like forest fires that clear old trees to make room for new growth. But forest fires can get out of control, Na Young pointed out. Sometimes they burn everything instead of just clearing space for new life. The Devourer fleet was getting closer. Long-range scans showed millions of ships, each one adapted to fight the combined chaos and harmony that humans and Kalari had used in the first battle. Sun-ho made a decision that surprised everyone. We are not going to fight them, sir? His officers asked in confusion. Fighting them just teaches them new ways to fight, he explained. Instead, we are going to show them something they have never seen before. We are going to show them true cooperation between completely different species. The plan was insane, even by human standards. Instead of preparing for battle, the humans and Kalari began creating something new together. Human chaos and Kalari harmony merged into a form of art that had never existed before. Musicians from Earth worked with crystal singers from Nivos to create songs that were both discordant and beautiful. Human engineers collaborated with Kalari builders to design structures that seemed to defy physics. Artists from both species painted pictures that moved and changed, telling stories that were different every time someone looked at them. When the Devourer fleet arrived at Nivos, they found something they could not understand. Instead of weapons and warships, they found a celebration. Humans and Kalari were creating art together in the space around the planet. Music that could be heard across the entire system. Light sculptures that danced between the stars. The Devourers stopped their attack. Their adaptation systems tried to analyze what they were seeing. But art could not be analyzed like technology or military tactics. Art was expression of consciousness, and consciousness could not be copied or consumed. They are confused, Na Young reported. Their ships are just floating there, scanning us over and over. Sun-ho opened a communication channel to the Devourer fleet. We know what you are, he said. You are not invaders. You are part of the galaxy's immune system. You wake up when life becomes too predictable. The response came as a harmonic vibration that the Kalari translated. We consume stagnation. We devour sameness. All life was becoming the same pattern. All thought was becoming the same logic. But look around you, Sun-ho said. Humans and Kalari are completely different species, but we are creating new things together. We are proving that the galaxy still has room for growth and change. The Devourer fleet began to move, but not to attack. They were circling the planet, observing the artistic collaboration between humans and crystal beings. Show them more, the lead Kalari suggested. Show them how different we can be while still working together. Human pilots began flying in formation with Kalari crystal ships. The combination of human unpredictability and Kalari harmonic precision created flight patterns that had never been seen before. Each species maintained their unique characteristics while creating something beautiful together. The Devourers watched for hours. Their massive fleet hung in space like a gray storm cloud, but they did not attack. They were learning, but not learning to copy. They were learning to understand. Finally, the Devourers spoke again. This is new growth. This is creative evolution. The galaxy pattern changes without our intervention. Kyungmin realized what was happening. They are satisfied. We have shown them that life in this galaxy is still evolving, still growing in new directions. They do not need to destroy us to force change. The gray ships began to change color. Slowly, they became transparent, then faded away entirely. The Devourers were returning to their sleep in the void between galaxies. Their purpose fulfilled not through destruction, but through the discovery of new possibilities. But as the last of the enemy ships disappeared, their final message was both a promise and a warning. We sleep again. But if the galaxy becomes stagnant, if all species think the same thoughts and dream the same dreams, we will wake again. Sun Ho understood. The Devourers would always be watching, waiting for signs that the galaxy needed to be shaken up again. But now the galaxy knew how to avoid that fate. They had to keep growing, keep changing, keep creating new forms of beauty and cooperation. Years later, the phrase "send the humans" had become common throughout the galaxy, but not just for impossible military problems. Humans were called in whenever a civilization was becoming too predictable, too comfortable, too similar to everyone else. Earth established the Department of Beautiful Problems, which sent human artists, thinkers, and controlled chaos makers to work with other species. Their job was to keep the galaxy weird enough that the Devourers would never need to wake up again. The Kalari rebuilt their world with new cities that incorporated human discord into their traditional harmony. Their songs became more complex, telling stories of crystal people and crazy humans who learned to make music together. Nayoung became the first human to learn how to sing in Kalari harmonics, while Kalari musicians learned to appreciate human rock and jazz. Their concerts were attended by beings from across the galaxy, who came to hear what cooperation between very different species could create. And in the deep space monitoring stations, officers like Daeho listened for new signals from unknown civilizations. When they found species that were becoming too logical, too predictable, too safe, they would send a message to Earth. We found another civilization that needs to learn how to be beautifully impossible. Can you send some humans to teach them? The answer was always the same: on our way. Because humanity had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the best way to fight monsters was not to defeat them, but to prove that you were still worthy of the strange, wonderful, impossible universe they were trying to protect.